Welcome to my very first SwearyKim tutorial on YouTube. We are going to be making a pastel rhinestone type tumbler. It is extremely hard for me not to curse, and I don't know if I'm allowed to. But anyways, I'm going in with a 12-ounce whiskey bent from Mother Tumbler. And then we're going to use one of the witch's brooms. That's their paintbrush from Adhesive Apothecary. And then I'm going to be mixing in the Primetime White with the Adhesive Apothecary-Thick glue. And I'm going to be painting that tumbler. This is just the first coat. You can use just white spray paint if you choose to. My white spray paint is acting like an ass, so I didn't use that. And then I'm going to be going in with Heart Happy, which is my curated glitter from PDB. This is like the perfect white opal ever. And then I'm going to be adding in another coat of that same mixture of white paint and glue. And then I'm going to be going over that with a very generous layer of glitter. I do this pretty quickly. I cover the bottom and the top first, just because I notice those dry the quickest, and then I go in the center, and then I'm going to go back over it again and again just to make sure I have every single square centimeter of this completely covered. And then I'm going to wait for it to completely dry and go in with a dry chip brush. This is just like a rough textured brush, and dry off all that, I can't talk. What's new? Brush off all of that excess glitter. I'm not too worried about there being like spots and stuff in this because we're going to be going over it with alcohol inks in here in just a moment. And then I'm going to go in with the Jen's Crafted Gems pastel pack. It's the Dollhouse pack. I used all of these except for the color Burnish that's in that pack, and I replaced that with the Batty Blood from the primary pack. And then I have these makeup sponges that I'm going to put a 91% isopropyl alcohol on, and I'm going to get that really saturated in there. And then I'm going in with this first color. By the way, everything that I'm using will be linked below, but I'm going to go in with this first like yellow color, and at first, I'm not worried about it being too bright. I just want to work on like my blending. It doesn't have to be perfect because we are going to be going in with AB rhinestones, so it does hide it a little bit. Now I'm going in with this like pastel green, which is called Minty Sagey Kim. Yes, named after yours truly. And I did immediately notice that beside the yellow, it wasn't showing up the way I wanted it to, so I saturated it a little bit more. You will see what I do to make this actually turn a little bit more green in just a moment. And then I'm going in with the blue, and I'm just going to keep blending all of these colors just all around the tumbler, and then going back over them to make them a little bit more pigmented. Because remember, I am diluting them with the alcohol that I'm putting in the sponge. That is why they look that way, and I'm doing that on purpose. That way, if I make any mistakes, it's very easy to fix. And also, if you have any harsh lines, if you take one of these makeup sponges with just alcohol on it, you can blend it out. As you can see, I'm taking like the side of the sponge that doesn't have any pigment on it and using that to help blend out the harshness of any lines that may occur. Now, this orangish, well, this is like the pastel pink. This is called Little Witchy. That's in the thing, is super pigmented, and it is a pastel pink, but it comes out a little bit more like peachy coral in this. So I took the Batty Blood and I used that to blend it. You just want to make sure that you're not using two colors that are going to cause a brown. You want to kind of keep your colors within like the color wheel of where they will make other pretty colors when you blend them together, like the blue and the pink are going to make a really pretty purple. And I continue just adding more color over and over again until I get this a pretty nice blended, but also semi-pigmented, because like I said, we are going to be going over this with transparent AB rhinestones. And even though they are transparent, they have that AB coating part to it, so that does mask a lot, which helps in this process. And of course, don't forget the butt of your tumbler. The butt of the tumbler I'm a little bit more worried about than I am the rest of it, because the butt of the tumbler won't be covered with rhinestones, so you do want that to look pretty nice and cohesive. Otherwise they're gonna see that and they're gonna think it's ugly, like I did with my first one. And once you get it to a point where you feel like everything's pretty decently blended, you're gonna set this off to the side and you're gonna let this dry. What you don't see me do is I actually seal this with my adhesive Apothecary-Thick glitter glue before I go on with epoxy, just because I am paranoid. Now I'm going in with the DIY Artisan epoxy that will of course be linked below with a discount code for you guys, and the Infinity Sticks by DIY. These are newer to me and I actually absolutely love them because I'm tired of buying popsicle sticks. So when I mix my epoxy, typically I do always use a fast set, but this was like late at night and I knew it would have time to turn like throughout the night, so I wasn't worried. But anyways, when I mix my epoxy, I always start with part B and then I put in part A, especially for smaller batches like this, because part A is typically thicker than part B and it just makes it easier to mix. I do not mix slowly. I don't care about bubbles because I own a torch, a propane torch, and because this is a regular setting epoxy, I do let this sit for about 15 minutes before I apply it to my tumbler. And this is just to show you can easily clean off these Infinity Sticks. The next time I use one of these, I actually didn't even use alcohol. I just used a paper towel and it came off perfectly clean. So now that this epoxy has sat there for about 15 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and coat my tumbler. Like I said, I have already sealed this. I did speak to Jen and she said that you actually don't have to seal alcohol inks. I don't work with inks a lot, so I wasn't sure. And I just didn't want to like flub it up. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word. It's really killing me not being able to say that word. But I just make sure I get this really nice and coated. I used right at about 20 milliliters because this is on like the raw glitter, because I didn't want to have to do a lot of finagling, but I let this completely cure. I did torch it to get out any bubbles. I don't know why, because I was covering up with rhinestones, but it's just habit. And then I applied one more thin coat. And then after I applied that one more thin coat, I let that cure, dry to the touch. And then I went in and I'm taking my little scalpel. I will have these linked below as well. I get these from Amazon. They are the absolute best things on freaking earth. Like I said, very hard for me not to say bad words. And I get that edge, and then I'm going to go in with my sanding paper. Sometimes I use a block. Most of the time I just use used sandpaper. This is an 80 grit, and I'm going around the top edge because I want to get a really nice rim job up there. I think that's very important no matter what kind of tumbler you do. And then I'm going to go around the bottom rim with this as well. And this is just me making sure that I really get that top rim, like a nice even edge around that top lip, because I am going to go in with one more very thin coat of epoxy over this. But before I do that, I'm going to go in with a finer grit sandpaper after I use the 80 grit. The finer grit is, I believe, a 320. I'm just getting up all the sanding dust. Normally I do this outside, but because I'm recording it, I'm doing it inside. 320 grit sandpaper. And this just helps me get it super smooth. That way it literally only takes one very thin coat of epoxy after this. And when I say thin coat, I mean like very thin coat, just to get it covered. And then after I get this all sanded, I am going to wipe it down with alcohol to get all that dust off of there. And then apply my last layer of epoxy and sign the bottom. Always sign the bottom or put your tag on there. This is something that I have learned majorly over the past like year or so. People do buy a lot of tumblers and they want to remember where they got the specific one from. This is it spinning with its last coat of epoxy. Let's give a huge shout out to Denos turners. That's my custom turner back there that I'm obsessed with. Now we're going to go in with our baby Blinger by Denos. Now that this is all cured, this little flipping tray I got from the Ameys Make Everything, and then I'm going in with Liquid Fusion in my needle tipped bottle, and then my PDB rhinestone tool. This is my favorite tool to use. I like it because it doesn't have a hollow end, it has a pointed end. And then my SS20 PDB Creative Studio GlamGlass Rhinestones Transparent AB. I'm going to get those, a healthy amount of those, put in my little flip tray, shake them all around so they turn the right side up. And then the top layer is going to be probably the top one, the very top first row is going to be your most important row because this is going to set the stage for the rest of your rhinestones. If you don't get these right, then your whole tumbler is going to be effed up if you are doing the honeycomb method. So I'm going to go ahead and get this first row applied on here. And I put them like right up to the edge. I don't really care about like if these are even because I'm going to show you how I make sure that they are even. So I do about half of them just to make sure that my glue doesn't dry. You want to make sure you don't use too much glue, especially on this part because it can ooze over. I have made that mistake before. So I'm going to flip my tumbler on its like the top down. That way it's level on my table. And then I'm going to take this pointy tool and I'm going to push all my rhinestones down. Now, oh, there, I popped one off. So I'm going to make sure they're all pushed down and even flush with the table. Now, with these SS20 rhinestones on this tumbler in specific, there is like, they don't fit perfectly around. So I know I need to have like little microscopic gaps between just a few of the rhinestones. I promise it's not something that is noticeable once the tumbler is all completed, but I know to make sure that I can fit all of them on there, I need to make sure that a few of them, I would say probably microscopic gaps between like 10 of them to make sure that it is in like they go all the way around and you don't have a big gap or some that are like squeezed way too tight so it makes them uneven. So I'm going to finish doing that top row, flip it up, down again, and then push them all down and make sure that they're all pretty even throughout. And this just sets the stage, like I said, for the rest of your tumbler, and it makes the honeycomb method so much easier to do. I 100% recommend starting at the top. That way you can flip it down and push it down and make it even. And then I'm going to go in with the second row and you just nestle your rhinestones in between the other row that you did. Now, I will say this. I think that this tumbler, like this pastel effect would be beautiful with these same rhinestones, but the scatter method, but I have just not done that. I love this, the honeycomb method. I love this, but I feel like the scatter method would be absolutely gorgeous. So if anyone does that, please tag me in whatever you do if you do it on another app. So I'm going to continue going in with each row. Because this is such a small tumbler, this one doesn't take very long. This is about as most patience as I have. I'm not going to talk the rest of the way through this. Like I said, you just nestle them in between. You'll feel, I want to say it's almost like a click. It's like a puzzle piece when you know it's in the right place. It's just a feeling. I don't know. It reminds me of when I was learning how to drive like a stick shift car, like a 5-speed, and you just had this feeling of when you knew to change gears. That's how I feel about placing rhinestones in a honeycomb method. You just know that it's in the right spot. So I'll go ahead and let the music play and speed this up really fast, and we'll finish this out. All right, so for this final layer, you just want to make sure you don't put them down too low. Like this has a nice, I want to say like beveled edge. So is that the word, beveled or rounded edge? So I could feel with like my thumb that these weren't going over that. That's what you want. Set your cup down and make sure that it's not too far down. But this is what it ends up looking like. This beautiful pastel rainbow rhinestone, super sparkly tumbler with a nice blended bottom. I am absolutely obsessed with this. Thank you so much for watching my very first YouTube video. Please subscribe and everything will be linked below. Bye.